This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we will showcase the contents of White's Color Support Pack number 2 of our Jumpstart Commander Cube. If you haven't been following along or are new to the channel, look in the description of this video for links to the primer video for this series, its playlist, as well as a list of the cards featured in this video. As previously showcased during the primer video for this series, these are the types of cards you can expect to see in every color support pack. Now, with the prologue coming to an end, let's start spotlighting some white support cards, beginning with our basic lands. We've got 3 basic plains to start off the pack, and not too far after that, we have 3 snow-covered basics to go along with the non-snow-covered basics. That's going to bring up our basic land total to 6. 6 basic lands in this color support pack. 6 basic lands in every color support pack. Also in every color support pack is one of the thriving lands, and of course, since this is white, we're going to look at a copy of Thriving Heath. Comes into play, or comes onto the battlefield, tapped as it enters, of course. And then when it does, we choose a color, and then we can tap Thriving Heath for 1 white mana or 1 mana of the chosen color. All right, the first 7 cards are lands. The next card is a non-basic utility land, and that's going to be Castle Ardenvale. This is going to enter the battlefield tapped unless we control a plains. It turns sideways for 1 white mana, or we can pay 2 and 2 white mana and tap it to create a 1/1 white human creature token. White does love to make those creature tokens, and this pack is going to be no different. All right, next up, we're going to go to our MDFC, which means that we're going to have a land on the back and a spell on the front. And for this pack, it is Skyclave Cleric, a 1/3 core cleric for 1 and 1 white mana. When Skyclave Cleric enters the battlefield, we gain 2 life. And then on the backside, of course, if we decide to play it for the land, it is Skyclave Basilica. It'll enter the battlefield tapped, but we can also tap it for 1 white mana. Since it is an MDFC with a land on the back, we're going to include Skyclave Cleric as part of the lands in this pack. So there you have it right there. The first 8 cards were 40% of the way through. We've got 8 lands, one of which is the MDFC. And now we are ready to roll with the rest of the cards in this pack. If you remember, after the MDFC, we have our Planeswalker for the pack, and that will come in the form of Gideon, Champion of Justice. This version of Gideon enters the battlefield with 4 loyalty counters for 2 and 2 white mana. We can put a loyalty counter onto Gideon let me say this again. We can +1 Gideon to activate its first ability to put a loyalty counter on him for each creature target opponent controls. So if our opponent is running with some kind of tribal deck or creature tokens and has quite the little battlefield on their side of the battlefield, well, we're going to be able to jam a whole heck of a lot of loyalty counters onto Gideon very, very quickly. We can pay 0 loyalty to have Gideon until end of turn become a human soldier creature with power and toughness each equal to the number of loyalty counters on him, and he gains indestructible. He's still a planeswalker, and we prevent all damage that will be dealt to him this turn. That could be amazing, particularly if we have some way to get evasion onto Gideon, or if one of our opponents do not have any creatures on their side of the battlefield. Then we can swing in with a massive Gideon and potentially knock them out of the game. And lastly, if needed, we have the ultimate reset button by removing 15 loyalty counters from Gideon to exile all other permanents. I'm quite sure you'll really be loved at the EDH table for pulling that move off, but in this Jumpstart Commander Cube, that could be all the difference in the world from restarting and winning, or just shuffling up and playing another game. All right, our next card here, it is our creature modifier. It's either going to be an aura or an equipment, and here we have an aura in the form of Eidolon of Countless Battles. All right, we have an enchantment creature spirit. Ooh, so you know how this is going to work because it has the bestow mechanic. So we have 2 options available to us when we decide to cast the spell. We can either pay 1 and 2 white mana to have this creature enter the battlefield, and it gets +1/+1 for each each creature we control and for each aura we control. So at a minimum, this is going to come into play as a 1/1 if we have no other creatures and no other enchantments. Or we can pay 2 and 2 white mana, and we can cast this as an aura enchanting target creature. And if we do, that creature gets +1/+1, where the +1/+1 is equal to the number of creatures and auras we control. So that's how it's going to work. And if we decide to bestow this spell by casting it as an aura, if the equipped creature were to die, the enchantment falls off and then it becomes a creature. So from the ability of through the dynamic of not worrying about 2-for-1ing, maybe it's in our best interest to cast this for its bestow cost so that if the creature gets removed, then the Eidolon of Countless Battles will fall off, and then we'll have a spirit on our side, which is still going to get the same power and toughness boosts that the aura was giving enchanted creature. All right, our next card is our Color Strength spell, and one of the things that white does love to do is it does love to hate on the graveyard. So let's include a copy of Rest in Peace. This enchantment for 1 and 1 white mana reads, when Rest in Peace enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards. If a card or token would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So this is really important because hopefully we're not running a graveyard strategy if we select this white color support pack. Let's get that into the disclaimer pool right away. If we're running graveyard shenanigans and synergies, casting Rest in Peace may not be in our best interest, because we'll lose everything out of our graveyard, including all of our opponents. But also, if any card or token would go to the graveyard from anywhere, it gets exiled instead. So if we're also running some kind of an aristocrat strategy or any kind of self-sacrifice where we need to get some death triggers, we don't want to cast Rest in Peace because it's going to hurt us, probably more than it would hurt our opponents. So Rest in Peace, although it could be a very powerful hoser against our opponents, let's make sure that we don't hose all over ourselves as well. All right, we are moving to our spot removal. We got 2 spot removal spells, and our first one is Stroke of Midnight. An instant for 2 and 1 white mana. We destroy target non-land permanent, and its controller creates a 1/1 white human creature token. Do we care about the 1/1 white human creature token? Oh, no, we most certainly do not. We're not going to care about that. I'm sure that our opponent is going to really care about the non-land permanent that got destroyed at instant speed. They can have the 1/1 token. We'll take that trade every day of the week and twice during Friday Night Magic. All right, spot removal spell number 2. It's On Thin Ice. Here we have a snow enchantment aura for 1 white mana. We have to enchant a snow land we control. Well, it's a good thing that we have 3 snow lands in this color support pack, and it's also a good thing that every color support pack has 3 snow basics as well. That makes On Thin Ice that much more potentially dangerous, because when On Thin Ice comes into play, we exile target creature an opponent controls until On Thin Ice leaves the battlefield. So that's going to mean that our opponent is going to have to remove the aura enchanting the snowland or remove the snowland itself. Is that possible in this Jumpstart Cube? Absolutely yes. Does our opponent want to waste a spot removal spell on that? Well, that's going to be up to the gameplay, the board states, and what creature was exiled when On Thin Ice hit the battlefield. All right, we're shifting away from spot removal spells to mass removal spells, and our first one in this pack, it is Terminus. For 4 and 2 white mana, we put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries. Just like that, all creatures straight to the bottom of their owner's libraries. However, if this is the first card we draw in any turn, we could pay 1 white mana for the miracle cost of this spell and cast it just for 1/6 of the investment of the card's actual mana value. That's right, we may cast Terminus for its miracle cost if we draw it, if it's the first card we drew that turn. All right, our next mass removal spell is not as is not as eloquent or wishy-washy as Terminus is. It's just straight up a Chroma's Vengeance. Sorcery speed for 4 and 2 white mana. We destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Yeah, note that this is a symmetrical effect, just like Terminus. Our creatures are also going to the bottom of our library. Well, our creatures, artifacts, I'm sorry, our artifacts, creatures, and enchantments are also going to be destroyed with a Chroma's Vengeance. If we choose to not do that, we could pay 3 generic mana and discard this card and draw a card through its cycling ability, which, considering what we might have on our side of the battlefield, that may seem a bit more palpable if we're trying to preserve our side of the board. All right, so we're up to our next card, which is our hate card, our defensive card. And in this pack, it is Selfless Squire, a 1/1 human soldier with flash for 3 and 1 white mana. Flash means that we may cast this spell at any time we can cast an instant. And when Selfless Squire enters the battlefield, we prevent all damage that would be dealt to us this turn. And whenever damage that would be dealt to us is prevented, we put that many +1/+1 counters onto Selfless Squire. So the best way in which we can just not goad the actual ability, but goad our opponent into thinking that they're about to win the game, they send their entire fleet of creatures, their entire army of creatures at us. We've got nothing, or we have very little. We choose not to block. The creatures go to deal combat damage, but before damage is dealt, we flash in Selfless Squire. We prevent all of that damage, and every 1 point equals 1 +1/+1 counter put onto this human soldier. It gets to our turn. We declare combat and send the Squire into combat and deal a whole heck of a lot of combat damage, most likely and hopefully knocking that opponent out of the game. That is the hate and defense card in this color support pack. Our next card is our resource advancement card, and that is Wedding Announcement. It is an enchantment for 2 and 1 white mana. At the beginning of our end step, we put an invitation counter on Wedding Announcement. If we attacked with 2 or more creatures this turn, we draw a card. Otherwise, which means if we didn't attack with 2 or more creatures to draw a card, otherwise we create a 1/1 white human creature token. Then, if Wedding Announcement has 3 or more invitation counters on it, we transform it. So before we can transform Wedding Announcements, we have to attack with 2 or more creatures. Actually, that's not true. I made a mistake. No, let's back that up. We only have 3 end steps before this gets transformed, because at the beginning of our end step, we put an invitation counter on this. So if it has 3 or more, it's going to get transformed. So we want to make sure we get the biggest bang for our bucks. The 1/1 tokens, they're okay, but what we really want to do is to draw those cards. Once we transform Wedding Announcement into Wedding Festivity, it is an anthem effect that gives creatures we control +1/+1. So although the bodies on our side of the battlefield that could be generated by Wedding Announcement would be nice recipients for that transformed anthem effect, let's be honest, we are not so looking to advance the number of creatures on our side of the battlefield. We want those cards. So we want to strategically make sure we get this into play so that we can take advantage of drawing those cards. And eventually, that Wedding Announcement is going to transform. We're going to get that anthem effect. We're going to have other creatures. Let's just make sure we maximize our return on the investment of that card. All right, our next card, our combat enhancement card. And here we have, besides hitting the camera stand and knocking the camera every which way but steady, we have Ao, the Dawn Sky, a 5/4 legendary dragon spirit with flying and vigilance for 3 and 2 white mana. When Ao dies, we choose one of the following 2 modes. Modes or options. Let's say we choose one of the following 2 options. We look at the top 7 cards of our library. We put any number of non-land permanent cards with total mana value 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then we put the rest on the bottom of our library in a random order, or we put 2 +1/+1 counters on each permanent we control that's a creature or a vehicle. So clearly this is going to be a much easier decision to make based upon what the other 4 packs we grab to construct our 100 card Jumpstart Commander deck. If going through the cards sees that we have lots and lots of smaller casting cards that we could utilize AOs straight from the top of our library onto our side of the battlefield ability, we may choose to go straight to the library. However, if we're looking to get if we're going wide with tokens or wide with a tribe, or we want to make them tall, well, 2+1/+1 counters on each creature we control when this dragon spirit dies. That could be the difference between winning and losing the game, particularly if we have a nice number of creatures. Every one of them is going to get 2+1/+1 counters. That could be a nightmare for math combat for our opponents each turn thereafter. All right, here we go. MTG BC, the last card of our pack. If you've been following along with this series, you know that our iconic creature type in white is Angels. So for color support pack number 2, our Angel is a Chroma Angel of Wrath, a 6/6 legendary angel for 5 and 3 white mana. A Chroma has flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, protection from black, and protection from red. So Rakdos will have no effect on a Chroma when they're deciding to target her with any spells or abilities. And I can assure you that it is not going to take a lot of imagination or creativity to sit down to the Jumpstart Commander EDH table and see that every one of our opponents are playing with red and or black, and we know we have a Chroma in our deck, that it's only going to be a matter of time until she hits the battlefield and then just completely decides to wreck all of their plans. The Vigilance allows us to attack with her and still have her untapped for the potential crackback. And of course, if the creatures that are going to be attacking us from our opponents are black and or red, well, a Chroma's going to block them without taking any kind of damage, and with the first strike, most likely kill almost all of them. All right, there we have it, MTG BC. We have showcased the contents of White's Color Support Pack number 2 of our Jumpstart Commander Cube. I look forward to reading your comments about this pack in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, a channel for all things Magic.